Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with the baseball twist, presented by my friends at Community America Credit Union. I'm Joel Goldberg, and today's episode is really a meaningful one. I've said this many times before. I think people know that have listened, if you're listening for the first time, beyond being a baseball announcer and a motivational speaker, I'm a storyteller. And I think my guest today, well, look, we all have stories to tell. But how many people have a story to tell that involves an Olympic medal and a story of triumph and tragedy, overcoming adversity, hard work? I mean, every element that you could put into an amazing story is what my guest has today. And unlike some of my guests, she is not one that has lived in the corporate world. So in many ways, I could relate to her because I had never lived in the corporate world until I started my speaking career. What I can't relate to is being an Olympic gymnast or an Olympic anything for that matter. I don't have that athletic ability. I never did. But my guest did have that along with a story and an amazing journey. And so my guest is Taran Humphrey. And Taran is a former Olympian, 2004 Olympics, where she is a two-time silver medalist. And she was competing balance beam. She's a world champion, two-time Hall of Fame inductee, Missouri's first Hall of Fame gymnast. She's inducted in the St. Joe, Missouri Hall of Fame class, their first ever in September of 2021. So that is coming up. Two-time NCAA Individual Champion on the bars, 11-time All-American. I don't even know how somebody does that. And much, much more. She also has a business on the side. She's a mom. She's going to school to be a paralegal. She's a public speaker and just starting on that. So I've got a passion for learning more about that, having been through it myself, not to mention the fact that as a gymnast, she has been through some things that I think we've heard a lot about, an uncomfortable discussion, but an important one. So that is a way of me introducing my guest and someone I've been fortunate enough to meet in the recent months. Taran Humphrey, silver medalist and Kansas City area resident. Taran, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well. It's good to see you. And I know I last saw you in person. We had lunch. Mutual friend, Dana Wright, great radio personality, introduced us. And you know, I was taken by your story, not just because there's so much in the world of women's gymnastics right now that has been marred by controversy and just something so awful. And of course, I want to talk to you about that. But I was just so intrigued by your journey and your platform and what you are hoping to do right now with all of those life lessons. We'll get to that in a moment. But first and foremost, how are you? And you know, the Olympics were not too long ago. I always sort of wonder for someone like yourself what that time of year is like in terms of reflection and memories.
I always enjoy watching the Olympics. It's a little bit harder for me because I was there. So I'm a little bit more critiquing, gymnastics, but it is always fun to see. And it's always fun to see like who comes up next, particularly on bars. I got my medal on bars. So I was really excited for Suni to join the medals. And I was really excited to watch it.
Yeah, it was an interesting time too. I mean, there's an element that all of those women and men, everybody competing for that matter, that they were dealing with the COVID aspect of it, and that certainly affected the gymnasts. Now you add in the fact that a couple of those female gymnasts were from here in this area. I don't know how close the gymnastics community is nationally or even internationally, but I've got to imagine locally there's no one coming out of here at that level that you haven't been in contact with.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I saw Kara and Leanne a couple of weeks before at the Dragon Camp, and they were doing awesome. You know, they were taking all the precautions just to be safe, and it's pretty heartbreaking at what happened. But COVID in general is just hard for gymnastics because taking 2 days off of gymnastics is huge, let alone for as long as they were out of the gym. So just everybody who got to come back and actually compete in the Olympics, that was just a huge jump.
And for people that don't understand the level of commitment to this, and I think everybody understands that there is a massive level of commitment for any Olympic athlete, but especially I feel like sports like gymnastics, the men and the women for sure. Figure skating, because that seems like a lot, and maybe not just those two, but a lot of these athletes take, for instance, the baseball players this year, which is still sometimes in and sometimes out as far as Olympics, or basketball, a bunch of NBA players. Well, they're doing this year round and getting paid absurd amounts of money to do it anyway. But a gymnast, a figure skater, a track star, and then so much of that could be based on making your money and sponsorships and all of that. But the amount of hours that you have to put in specifically to become a gymnast, how absurd, how crazy is that?
Oh, it's extremely crazy. It's a full-time job. I trained 40 hours a week. So I did half days. I trained in the morning, had a break, and then went back to the gym later. I also trained before school. We ended up being so late that Al had to stop doing that. But any free time, it's in the gym. So it's absurd about how often you train.
Was it always a dream of yours, or I don't think you could just stumble into the Olympics. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody loves it the same way, I would imagine,
Right.
too. I mean, I've got to think that for some competitors, it could be a burden that you carry with you, and maybe some love it more than others. Clearly, you have to have the talent to be at that level. If you don't have the talent, put the passion piece or the love or whatever it is aside. You have to have the talent, obviously. But I've always wondered how much that could strip of a kid's childhood too,
Oh, yeah.
because it's a different world than probably any of the rest of your friends outside of gymnastics. What was that like as a little kid growing up in I believe, St. Joe, Missouri?
Yeah, I trained in a Rising Stars, and I was the best in my gym. However, when I went to state, we would always get our butts whooped, and Al's team would always win. And so my parents were like, why is this gym winning so much? So we had, a very honest conversation with the coach at the time. And she said, I just can't take you where you want to go. This is the gym you need to go. So if you want to do it, you need to move. So my mom and I ended up moving in the Kansas City area and trained with Al Fong. He would always from the beginning say, oh my gosh, you're going to make this Olympic team. My parents are very, very realistic. And they said, Al, we just want a college scholarship. That's all we want. And he's like, yeah, you'll get that. But what about the Olympics? So I went training just as a goal of making a college team. That was my goal all along. And then when I got older and older, I made every single, I went elite when I was 12 years old. I ended up making every team that I tried for. And when I was about 15 years old, it finally kind of hit me like maybe Al wasn't so crazy. Like maybe I am good enough to make this Olympic team. So when I was 15, I ended up changing my mindset and training for the Olympics. And it was more of, it wasn't a job anymore. I want to do this for myself. I want to compete in the Olympics for myself because why not? I'm good enough and I worked this hard. I might as well. So I would say it wasn't my whole life. I wanted to go to the Olympics. I know every little girl, and every little boy that does gymnastics always says that at the beginning, but I never really wanted that until I was older. And then it became realistic when I was about 15.
So you stumble onto it in your teen years, and then you end up in Athens too. How does one explain that experience? Again, this is another one that we all watch it on TV. I'm not, and I think I told you this, I've never been someone that really understands the level of gymnastics, or so if someone really badly messes up, I could see it. But to me, it's like I don't even know what those. It's such a finite thing that if I'm sitting with someone, even my wife, and they'll say "ooh," and I'm like, wait, what went wrong? I looked pretty good to me. Like the talent level is so ridiculous off the charts, and I know that it is the smallest of little details that you are all judged on, and so you understand it obviously at a level that I don't. I want to be clear about that. Yet, what I do understand is the amount of pressure has to be unbelievable for anyone at any age. But for the most part, we're talking generally about teenage girls at that level, maybe in their 20s too. How did you handle all that?
I handled it Pretty well. I would say it's definitely my family. My family kind of brought me back down. I was like, oh my God, I'm competing in the Olympics. And they're like, Taryn, it's just a sport. Like it's okay. Like, we're going to love you no matter what. We're going to love you if you go and mess up. We're going to, so it kind of brought it down a little bit. I'm not downplaying the Olympics. It's the hardest thing ever. But in reality, it is just a sport, and you're always going to come back to your family. So I kind of took that at heart, and I was like, I'm going to go. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to have fun. And there's always going to be pressure, but I'm going to try to handle it by just talking to myself every day and just talking to my family.
So to win silver there, and it's been a few years, but
yes,
tell me about that experience and what it was all like.
Oh my gosh, it was so crazy. So in the United States, I not once ever medaled in the United States. So I went to meet after meet, never once medaled in bars. So we were sitting down after the first Olympics, and they were like, Taryn, you made bar finals. And I said, no, I didn't. Like, the bar queen is sitting beside me, Courtney Coupets, and she's always, won bars. And they said, no, like, you actually made it. And I like probably asked 3 or 4 times, are you sure I made this team? Like, how can I compete? Like, I was just excited to be there. And so it was so crazy to compete beside my idol. And Corkina was the best bar worker at the time. And she had fallen, and she was right before me. So it was just so surreal. Like, I actually have a chance to get a medal. It was a really cool experience.
So you go over there, and at that point, is that the goal? I mean, are you sitting there thinking, wait a minute, I could go over here and bring something home, or is it just whatever happens?
Right. No, my goal was just to compete at the Olympics and get a medal for the team. It was all about the team. So just getting an individual medal, I was very happy to get it, but I was there for the team.
So amazing experience, and I want to talk about what you're doing right now. Some of it is related, some of it is not. Some of it is, career and paying the bills and taking care of family and all of that fun stuff that we all have to do. There's been so much talk about Larry Nassar. Mm-hmm. And I mean, at this point, it's a name. It doesn't matter whether you know anything about gymnastics. You hear that name, I think, and everybody knows to an extent what it means or who he is, and I think gives everybody a feeling that's awful, right? Which I think we all should feel. And there's been so much talk about it. Of course, it really resurfaced a lot lately because of the Olympics this past summer in Japan. But I know you made some news as well, summer of 2020, so about a year before. I guess it would have been the Olympics at that point if not for COVID. And the reason why I want to bring it up, and I know that you're okay talking about it, is one, I think it's important for people to hear. Two, I think it's the direction you're going and potentially making a major impact in this country and around the world through advocacy and others, which I want to talk about. But unfortunately, you, like so many, mm-hmm. I think the number is absurd, right? I mean, it's in the hundreds of female gymnasts had to deal with this man and had awful experiences. What can you share with me and my audience?
I just want to share, it's very sad, and it's very sad that our sport is overshadowed by Larry, because it's so much more than that. There's so many kids, growing up like I did, wanting to be an Olympic athlete, and it's very sad that it goes back to Larry every time. So eventually I would like to get gymnastics to be popular in a good way, because not all experiences are bad. Unfortunately, this one was really bad. But I hope one day that, my daughter gets in gymnastics and she's going to have a good experience. And because there are so many good people, I just want everyone to know, like, it's just very hard to keep moving on. I want everyone to see, Suni and everyone that just came up, how hard they worked, and not just overshadow it by Larry. Those kids work their butts off, and they deserve the recognition they have too. So it's kind of a fine line, like, to move on, but at the same time recognize what's all going on, and so they don't make mistakes in the future.
Well, and I think that sadly, sexual abuse, assault, never, everything that comes with that is around in everyday life. I don't know. I've thought about this a little bit. I mean, maybe the positive. I know there are no positives to any of his story,
Right.
but hopefully, because I'm always looking for some kind of a silver lining. I've always been a glass half full type of guy. Easy for me to say in this situation, but I'm hoping that the exposure, as much of a stain as it is on the sport, and a black eye that trails the sport on an everyday basis, is an opportunity to bring awareness
Right. Yeah.
to something that happens every single day, unfortunately, in cities, suburbs, country, you name it, wherever across the country. This one happens to be more high profile because it involves a lot of Olympians,
Sure.
aspiring Olympians. So I guess there's that positive to it, that there's an opportunity to do something. I mean, how much have you thought about that
Right.
with your story and what that could do for others? And
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to get into any detail you don't want to with your story,
Right.
but I imagine that your story is similar to others and in some ways different too,
Right.
that dealt with this monster of a man.
I do think that with all this happening, it has changed quite a bit. Parents are allowed to travel now. Parents are allowed to be with them now. And when I was a gymnast, that wasn't the case. So, and obviously more education's come out of this. So that's a positive. And I just want to be able to tell my daughter or teach her how to step up and how to say something when I couldn't at that age. So I just want to be able to, share my story. So she's not afraid to come out and she's not afraid to be embarrassed or just to be in certain situations that she shouldn't be in. So that is a positive. I'm more aware of everything going around me now, and I know everybody else is too.
So when she is old enough, what will you tell your daughter?
I want to just tell her that no matter what, I will love her no matter what happens. If she's so scared to tell me something, please don't be, because I want to be able to help her, and I can't help her when I don't know what's going on. So more than anything, that's what I'm going to tell her. Please don't be afraid to step up and tell me, because I'm not going to love you any less. I'm not going to, I think that's what everyone was, and I personally was afraid of. I was scared. I was scared to tell everyone, because what will they think of me? So I want to make sure that she knows that no matter what, I will never think of her any less.
And I think everybody that's listening, as I said, would know the name, but Larry Nassar was involved at the highest levels of women's gymnastics for years and years and years, and thankfully is no longer involved and is locked up. But I mean, this is a man that, from what I've read, hundreds, maybe 300 plus, women, girls that have accused him, whether it be molestation, sexual assault, whatever it is. And I just, again, we don't need to get into detail. I'm not going to put you there, but this was a man that had access to everyone, and that you as gymnasts, and I know this in terms of sports, the rigors of sports, you need medical care. You need a good trainer. You have to be able to, you're told to trust your trainer. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that was part of the issue, among many others, is the access that this man had to the success of your career. Is that a safe way to say it?
Yeah, absolutely. You're supposed to trust your doctors. You're supposed to trust your trainers. At the time, you don't have any reason not to. USA Gymnastics, the highest organization of gymnastics, hired this man. So, you're told, like, these are the best of the best. So it's just such a hard situation and very, very sad.
Yeah. And, this is, I think that I feel like in recent years, probably the two biggest names that have come to light. And so I think about this, like, how many more are there, but have been Larry Nassar and Jerry Sandusky, the Penn State football coach. And that one got a lot of attention. I think sometimes in some ways, maybe more attention on that one, just and that's just a whole gender discussion there, men, women, but those female gymnasts, and you were one of them, in such a spotlight. It feels to me like, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, that his impact on the sport in the most devastating of ways affected everyone, whether it was someone that accused him of something or not. And then bigger picture, I don't know if cover up is the right word or not, but what it did for the whole sport in USA Gymnastics. And, we saw a lot of talk about this again during the Olympics. I mean, how wrecked, how messed up was this sport that you love so much? Yeah. Is it right now?
Yeah, no, it turned our sport upside down. But it did bring to light actually how much cover up was happening, in the 90s, before most of those kids were even born. Stuff was being covered up. So it literally affected everyone, from the kids that just started to years and years of gymnastics history. Everything has changed. From the rules, it's completely turned it upside down.
So one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have you on was that you're wanting to do something with this. And I know you're still involved in gymnastics. You're also working on the paralegal and really just starting a speaking career. And that was exciting to me too, having started my own 4 years ago. And you and I have talked about that. But first off, tell me about your involvement in gymnastics locally at this point.
Yeah, I still like to be involved. I like to coach locally. I coach at Gage, where Karen Leanne trained. I like to pop in there every once in a while. But the main reason is I would like to change child abuse laws. The average person, I think there was a study that came out, but the average child abuse victim doesn't come out till they're 53 years old. In the state of Kansas, you only have till you're 21. So we have to change that. I'm 35 years old, and it was terrifying and embarrassing to come out at 34 years old. So we have to be able to make a change, and we have to make our change for our young and our children that are coming up, so they're not afraid to come out, or they don't miss the opportunity to hold them accountable. So my thing is, I wanted to come out so I could hold the organization accountable, so my daughter could hold people accountable if it were to ever happen. Hopefully it never happens, but we have to protect our children. And that even means young adults. At 21, you're still a baby. You're still, a young adult figuring out life. So there's no way that you can be mature and emotionally ready to handle that and come out with that. So I think people really need to really dig down and think of your children, think of your grandchildren. So please help me come forward and change this law in Kansas, especially. Missouri's a little bit better, but any help I can have, I would love to, share your story. So that is the main reason why I would like to come out. I want to change this law.
So essentially what you're saying, Taryn, is if something were, God forbid, to happen to you in the state of Kansas, and this doesn't have to be a gymnast thing, right? Sure. This could be anybody. 12 years old, 14 years old, 8 years old. God, I mean, every age is awful. And you finally get the courage to tell somebody about it when you're 35 years old. What happens in Kansas?
Basically, you go to an attorney and they say, how old are you now? And they'll say 35. And they say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I can get you a counselor, but I can't help you hold this person accountable. You're past 21. It's so heartbreaking. And I can't even fathom, like I said, I'm 35, and it was still really hard to come out, and it's really hard to share your story, and it's really hard to move forward and help the younger generation when all's happening is you came out and that was it. Like, you have to be able to hold this person accountable for what happened.
So essentially, unless you have the ability to come out before 21, and I don't even know that ability is the right word. I mean, right. Certainly there's courage involved, but I mean, what are you going to tell somebody that, oh, sorry, you're 22 now, too late.
Right.
Should have done it sooner.
Right.
It seems like a unbelievably unfair burden on a victim.
Absolutely. I've talked to numerous amount of attorneys, and they're like, the hardest thing about my job being in this particular area is, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. You know, how can you help someone when you can't? So I just want people to really dig down, and these girls coming forward are very brave. Like, you know, it's very, very hard to come out with abuse, and it's even harder to come out publicly. So let's change this. Let's all work together and let's change it.
There are some states, though, that there is no age limitation, right? I mean, you mentioned Missouri. How would Missouri compare to Kansas?
Yeah, Kansas is different because it's 21. Missouri, I believe it's 10 or 20 years after your 18th birthday. 20 years, I believe. So I'm not super familiar with all the laws, but there are some laws that are better. 28 is still better than 21. So, you know, I don't know every law, but it should at least be 50 or something, 60. So that's a really, really bad crime. And to have a limitation for that is just absurd.
The thing that doesn't make sense to me is that, like, this is considered one of the worst crimes out there.
Right.
Right. And I don't know how you compare. I mean, when you start talking about some of the worst crimes, they're all awful. They're all terrible. But I mean, this is taking advantage of those that are vulnerable, that can't protect themselves, that can't advocate for themselves necessarily. And everyone knows that it's the worst of the worst.
Right.
Yet the law is not set up to protect those that have the courage later. What have you heard when you have advocated, when you have told your story? Have you gotten a why beyond just, well, that's just the way it is? Have you heard a why it's set up the way it is?
You know, I haven't learned a why. I have heard is we just haven't, it hasn't come up. And it just blows my mind because it happens every day. And you don't go to school and learn how to manage this. So it is a hard subject, and it is something that is very hard to talk about, but it's something that needs to be talked about. Like I said, you don't go to school to learn, unfortunately, how to do your taxes, how to come out if you're a sex abuse victim. You don't learn that stuff. You don't, unless your parents tell you how. And my parents did tell me how, but it was in a way where I couldn't. And so I think we just need to be more aware and figure out a way where it is normal to kind of talk about it. And that way we can hold people accountable. I'm open for solutions, and I'm open to help any way that I can.
And I think that's the platform that you have right now, and a bit of what, maybe not a bit, a lot of what is motivating you. I mean, you already referenced your daughter, but you know, I always love talking to people about the purpose question. What gets you out of bed? Why do you do what you do? And it sounds to me like your daughter, first and foremost, is that motivation. But is there a feeling right now on your end that you have this unique purpose, this opportunity right now?
Yeah, sure. Like you said, my daughter, I wake up every morning and I want to protect her. I want to be able to protect her. But there are days where, you know, I'm like, why am I going to continue to do this? Am I making a difference? And then there are days that I came out late, and there's a purpose, and stuff keeps coming to me. Like, I never had any idea about Kansas law, no idea. And when I came out late, they approached me and they're like, can you help? And I said, absolutely. I'll help in any way that I can. And that's the day I feel like I'm making a difference, and I'm making a difference for these kids that couldn't speak for themselves, and making a difference for the adults who need their justice.
I wanted to ask you about that too, because it sounds to me like you did have the support. I think sometimes it's very easy to stereotype this if someone hasn't walked in the shoes. And I guess I'm speaking for myself. I don't know that I've just blindly stereotyped it, but a lot of times you think, boy, well, if that child, whether it be in the gymnastics world or whatever, if they had some support around them, that maybe it would have been easier. But it sounds to me like you did have that support from your family, and yet you still were a victim. And I'm curious sort of how you balance that, because you ended up being caught up in the middle of all of it, and you did have help there, and yet you still were a victim.
Yeah. Like I said, being a abuse victim is already hard. But when you're in the public eye, there's certain decisions that you have to make. Do I want to tell everyone? Because what are they going to think about me? Even when I told my family, the questions are, well, are you prepared to come out publicly because of all the backlash that you're going to receive? And I think just for me, it's worth it. It's worth it to tell my story, because if I just help one person, then I'm happy. I know there are a ton of girls still in my situation that are so scared to come out and do have the support. But it's just, are they ready for it? Are they mentally able to handle this? Because it brings a lot of emotions back to you. You could just be sitting there one day and just bawl. It's a lot of emotions, and especially coming out publicly. So being an Olympian is great, but it also comes with publicity, and it will also come with backlash. So you have to be prepared mentally. You have maybe talk to somebody. That's got me through it. I talk to my family every day, but I also talk to a therapist. So, there's no shame in that. There's no shame in asking for help. Yeah.
And in your case too, I mean, what you're describing and the courage that it takes, and everything that you've got to balance with the backlash that you talked about, and the attention, you're doing that in your mid-30s. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could even imagine doing that, say, as a teenager.
No, absolutely. I feel bad for all of the athletes have to have their career on social media. One little mistake and it's like everybody just unravels and they talk so bad about them. But in reality, like, they're only human. They're on this journey trying to become a better athlete, and you have trolls, for lack of better words, coming and telling you, you should have done this, you should have done this. Well, reality, they're still people and they're still making mistakes. So it breaks my heart how bad people talk about other people online. I want people to be aware that they are reading the comments. They're reading what you're writing about them. And it's just, would you want someone talking about your child like that? I wouldn't. So.
Yeah. And it happens to everyone. Mm-hmm. Shoot, I get stuff too on social media. It's nothing like what any of the athletes would get. And it's not a fair comparison, other than the fact that I see the little bits of it, just even to me sometimes. So I can only imagine. I lately saw one of the professional tennis players, US Open, who lost a match, and she shared screenshot of some of the messages she was getting on Instagram. And I mean, it was vile, and all just because she lost. Right. By the way, there's no excuse for talking to anyone like that ever. I won't even repeat the stuff that was coming in. It made no sense. And a lot of it to me seemed to be very gender-based too.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't see somebody saying the things to her that they would have to a man. But I think that's and this is totally different than the Larry Nassar discussion, although the after effects are, once you're out there, who knows what people are going to say to you just because. I don't even know why people say those type of things, but they're human, right? And the human nature, like, thankfully you didn't have to be competing while social media is like it is now.
Right.
But when you talk about some of the girls that you referenced before, you mentioned Kara Eaker, Leanne Wong from here in Kansas City. They're at that age where they don't know any better than social media, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a catch-22. It's good to have your sport out there, because later the endorsements come and you're able to make more money, whereas I wasn't allowed to make money because I couldn't take any money. So in that way, it's good to get out there. But at the same time, you're living your life in front of people. You cannot be a normal child. You can't be a normal kid. You can't go anywhere without someone saying something or someone saying, okay, I know who you are. Like, it's just a totally different world.
I want to shift gears, and there's so much amazing to your story, and I think so much more amazing to come with the platform that you have. But very successful, obviously, in the Olympics and gymnastics. Overall, in the course of your lifetime, what's the biggest home run that you have hit?
Oh my goodness. Probably my daughter. I never knew I could love someone so much until this little thing. I really want to be a good mom, and I really want her to live the best life. So yes, I'm an Olympian, but she's the main reason why I'm trying to be a better person every day, and try to help more people that I can.
Yeah, all the inspiration that you need, and she'll continue to provide that. How about a swing and a miss in the course of your life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, sure. I've had lots of those. I would say the biggest one when in 2003, I had made the world team, and I was training, and the day before we went and trained on podium, I got my spot taken away from me. Chelsea Mimmel, who everyone knows nowadays, making her comeback, mom, great person. She ended up stealing my world spot. She won in Pan Am's, and they flew her down and took me off of worlds and put her on my spot. So I turned 8. I was on my 17th birthday watching her train in my spot. And it actually ended up being the best thing I've ever done. I remember watching the girls on podium, and I made a promise to myself that I would never have anyone take my spot again. So that fueled me, and I went back to the gym and I worked harder. I did extra numbers, and I ended up making the Olympic team. So sometimes the setbacks are good. So I used my setback to come back even stronger. And I think I use that in life, and I want to use that in life, and I want to come back stronger.
I love that. And the best misses, if processed and used the right way, do lead to something positive. Again, maybe that's the eternal optimist in me. The last of my baseball theme questions is small ball. And I think that small ball applies to any walk of life, profession, but certainly in the regimented world of gymnastics too, where every little thing potentially could add up to the difference in a medal or a not, bronze to silver, silver to gold, on and on. What was small ball to you, the little things that add up to the big results?
I think the small ball for me is enjoy life. Enjoy your bad days, enjoy your good days. You have to listen to yourself. If you don't feel like doing anything today, don't do anything that day. I think the biggest, just don't have regrets. And just know that bad days are going to come, but if you can work hard every day, then eventually it'll pay off. So just keep working.
I love that. All right, 4 final questions as we round the bases. The first one, let's do a little bit of a plug, because I know that you have some business stuff on the side beyond the speaking that is emerging. I don't know a whole lot, understandably, I think, about custom leotards, but you certainly know that world. Tell me about that for you.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I wanted a way to kind of stay in gymnastics, but not be fully in gymnastics. So they have competitions every year, it's season. So I started making leotards. I make custom leotards. It's kind of been fun and exciting to be a struggling business owner, but it's a way to express myself, and it's a way to help gymnasts be excited about leotards. So I've been doing that on the side. I've also been trying to get KU a gymnastics program. I think that would be wonderful. We have some of the best gymnasts in the Kansas City area, but no college team. So I'm really, really pushing KU to bring in some more scholarships and go that route.
Love that. Rock Chalk Jayhawk. And so let's see if we can get KU a gymnastics program. And I know a little someone good that knows something about that, as in Taran Humphrey. So, all right. Second question, as we round the bases, you were telling me that you had a stint as a police officer, 4.5 years. What was that experience like? And
Yes.
what kind of police officer were you?
Yeah, I was a Raymore police officer. I absolutely loved being a police officer. It was the nights I had a little trouble with. I have trouble sleeping anyways. So staying up all night was pretty difficult. But I would say it's probably the most humbling experience I have ever seen in my life. Being in gymnastics, you're so sheltered. And then I went to the total opposite. Your whole life you're told stay out of people's business. And being a police officer, you're going to be right in their business. So it was a very, very humbling experience. I'm glad I did it. Thank God for police officers because they are needed and may not be treated how they should. But I loved it. I loved it.
All right, third question as we round the bases. This is another fun one. 2 seasons of American Ninja Warrior. Again, something that I will never do, never could do, but I think it probably takes an athlete at your level with your skills to be able to do something like that. How much fun was it? What was the experience like?
So at the time that I did American Ninja Warrior, it wasn't very popular. So my friend said, "Hey, I sent you into American Ninja Warrior." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, I don't even know what that is." So I was like YouTubing it and I'm like, okay, that's cool, but how do I train for that? I've never seen these obstacles. So I had no idea what to do. I would just go and do cardio, maybe lift a little bit. So the first season I did really, really well. The second season, not so well. My body started kind of breaking down a little bit. It was a great experience, but it's probably something I will never do again. I ended up running I think it was 3:00 in the morning and it was night. It was cold. I was literally in like a little swimsuit. I was freezing. But it was a really cool experience. I got to meet some pretty cool people and I'm glad I did it.
You still do something like that?
No, I like walking now. I like going on my little 20-minute walk and that's good for me. So
All right, fair enough. Last question, the walk-off, and I don't think we could talk about this enough too, but I think your life has changed with the birth of your daughter. It's given you so much purpose. And so I just wanted to ask you more about her, what it's like to be a mom and how much that changed your life.
She's changed my life so much. I just love her so much. I didn't know you could love something like that as much as I do. My mom always says she's just like me. She's so crazy. She runs and just dives off things, no fear. She's crazy, but I love her. She'll hopefully do big things, and I can't wait to support her in her journey and whatever she decides, whether it's gymnastics or not. I'm good with anything else. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is she wanting to do at this point? But she's probably still a little too young to be able to really tell you exactly what that is, right?
Sure. Yeah. She did learn how to do a forward roll the other day. So I think she loves gymnastics, but I also think she loves swimming. So I'd be good with swimming. It's a little, in my opinion, a little less hard on the body. So let's shoot for swimming.
That sounds pretty good too. And she is how old right now, Taryn?
17 months.
Yeah. So this will all come to play in the coming months. If anyone wants to learn more about Taryn and some of what she has talked about and the leotards, the clothing, and much more, you could just go to the website taranhumphrey.com. I think everybody should know how to spell your name, but if they don't, if they Googled it, they'd figure it out. Terin. That's the part that maybe some people get wrong. And there's no S on the end of Humphrey. So TerinHumprey, taranhumphrey.com. I'm guessing that you've had that every single which way messed up and misspelled and this and that, but they'll figure it out. They'll get there. Also, if you want to learn a little bit more, whether it's what's going on with her endeavors at KU and everything else, the clothing brand Taran Humphrey, just Taran Humphrey line for Instagram. Taran Humphrey line is the way to go. And I think most importantly, as you start finding the stage and having a voice, that you're gonna help change the world and change these inexplicable laws and rules that we have in certain places. And I think that'll make a difference in someone's life. So I'm a fan of what you are doing and the passion that you have, and I'm grateful that you spent some time today, Taryn, on Rounding the Bases.
Thank you for having me.
All right, great to be able to visit with Taran Humphrey.